Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for having us. So, AC, you're president and chief merchandising officer at Whole Foods, and I know in that role you're really involved in sourcing and quality standards, but you've also been in the industry since the 70s.
Right.
Give us a little background of what the natural foods world looked like back then.
Sure. Well, I grew up in the food business here in New York. My family had a store and my father had a restaurant that I worked in. But I went off to Boston to study chemical engineering at Northeastern University. And after a few years of doing that, and had a cooperative education program, so I was out working at Polaroid, making chemical dyes for the color film. I realized after doing that for a little while that I didn't want to spend my life working in a chemical factory.
Okay. Fair.
So, right. And so I left, I stopped doing that, and needing something to do, I had been shopping in a little natural food store in Boston called Erewhon. It was a macrobiotics store. And so this was March of 1974. So I figured I needed to do something to tell my parents, what are you doing now? I'm working in the store. So anyway, I went in there, and the thing for me was, back then, people were mostly concerned about the chemical additives in food. It was really almost before organic. There wasn't really a definition of organic at that point, so people were worried about chemical preservatives and colors and things like that in their food. And so what we were selling at that point were additive-free foods and whole foods as much as possible. And so that was, in the late 60s, early 70s, that was really kind of what people were interested in. And it really was, we started to sell, we had some produce that was supposedly organic, but we never really knew for sure because there was really no laws in the country to define it. It wasn't until 1979 when California passed their organic food law that there was now a definition for what organic was. And it started to clean that whole part of the business up. And so we really started to see more availability of organic produce, especially through the 80s. And then in 1990, the federal government finally passed a law.
Right.
And at that point, there was a clear definition that everyone aligned to, and that really started the kind of explosion of organic foods.
Right. So you joined Whole Foods in 92 through an acquisition, right? So you had been at Bread and Circus.
I had been at after Erewhon, I started working at Bread and Circus, which was a little natural food store with 10 people who worked there, including the owner, and that was in 1977. And by 1992, we had grown to 6 stores and about 800 people. And Whole Foods had started in Austin, Texas in 1980, and then grown to around Texas and into the Bay Area, California. And Whole Foods went public with just 10 stores at the time. And then when they bought Bread and Circus, at that point, we were 18 stores at Whole Foods.
So what was the perception of Whole Foods at the time? Were people happy about that deal, or was there resistance to that?
I think at the time, I wasn't happy. I liked working for the person I was working for. So, but I think that we saw the opportunity. The great thing that Whole Foods brought, and I think was a really important cornerstone of Whole Foods, is the empowerment culture, and really empowering people and really letting people be creative and that kind of thing. That was really a great thing for our company, and I think it allowed us to grow the way that we did.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think Whole Foods especially has been really instrumental in the mainstreaming of natural foods. And you mentioned organic. I know the company really helped actually set those standards. What have been some of the challenges that have come with that as the company's grown, as natural food has become more mainstream?
Well, I think the biggest thing that, as we've gone along through the years, is that it's trying to understand. Well, we didn't know everything. We didn't. Like I said, I started off. My family had been in the food business, but I didn't know what organic, product was. And then, so as we grew and we started to try to make our stores bigger and sell more products and listen to our customers about what they were asking for, we started running into the realization that a lot of the product we needed to develop, the standards we needed to develop and the product. So for instance, as we started opening larger stores up that had meat departments, we started looking around for meat that was raised without antibiotics and hormones, and there really wasn't any. There was Coleman beef from Colorado, but when we wanted to sell chicken at Bread and Circus in Boston, there was nobody raising it without antibiotics. So we started finding small farmers who were willing to try it, often with problems. We eventually were able to develop that and develop a standard around what no antibiotics and no hormones meant. And we were able to get the FSIS at the USDA to recognize this as a growing method that they would be willing to allow people to put on their labels. So it was trying to create that definition around that. In the same way, in 2007, we started to become more concerned about not just the quality of our product and was it safe and healthy for people to eat, but we started to become concerned about the things we were hearing about the way that the workers may or may not be being treated, especially in developing countries where we were sourcing things like bananas, pineapples, avocados, things like that. So we looked around and we know that there was the fair trade program out there, but it really didn't do everything that we wanted because original fair trade was developed to help small farmers form cooperatives, small coffee farmers form cooperatives so that they could get paid a better for their coffee. But when we wanted to try to apply it to, say, a large banana plantation where there was a lot of workers there, it didn't really fit that model. And it also, the fair trade program, the early one, didn't also have an environmental piece to it, which we wanted. So we worked with the organizations like Rainforest Alliance and Fair Trade USA, and we developed our whole trade program, which does both of those things. And so we've been able to, it's been about 12 years it's been in place. We've been able to, just last year, for instance, we felt like it had a positive effect on over 57,000 small farmers and workers in 11 countries where we source these products from. And as part of the whole trade or fair trade model, besides paying a fair wage and price to the farmer, there's a social development fund that is additional money that we give to the workers' committee themselves, and they decide what to do with that money to benefit the communities where they live.
Right.
So last year alone, we gave over $5 million in this social premium to the workers for all these companies that we buy bananas and pineapples, things like that from. And they use that money mostly to set up health clinics, including eyesight and dental, scholarships for the students of the workers.
Right.
And also to projects in their communities where they live that might help them, put new buildings, new roofs on their houses, things like that. There was one project, I was down visiting one of our growers in Mexico in the spring, Divamex, they grow our whole trade peppers. And right there on the farm, they had health clinics going, and they talked to us about all the scholarships. But they said that the workers had taken $50,000 the year before and had sent it back to their community, Veracruz, where a lot of them came from, because in that community there was no running water, and the nearest water source was 3 kilometers away, and the women had to spend 8 hours a day hauling water back to their village.
Right.
And so they took that $50,000 and they put a water system in, and now the people don't have to haul water to that village anymore.
Okay.
So those type of improvement projects are important. So that's the kind of those are the kind of things that we've done over the years to try to, Whole Foods operates on a stakeholder model where we try to take into account the needs of all the different stakeholders of our business, from our customers, our team members, the environment, the communities that we do business in, and our owners, our investors.
Right.
And there's a balancing act between all of that. And what we try to do is to balance that and create programs where we think is needed.
Okay, so let's talk actually about one of your relatively new stakeholders, which is Amazon.
Okay.
Elephant in the room.
Our new owner.
Right, you're a big stakeholder, right? How has that so far impacted the way Whole Foods operates? I mean, when you think about the impact that it's had on the business, when you think about sourcing, when you think about quality, I mean, how has that changed how you run the company?
Well, the good news is that, for us anyway, is that when we merged with Amazon, they said to us right from the beginning, right when we were having the talks pre-merger, that they would not want to change anything about our quality standards, that they knew that that was incredibly important to our customers, to our team members, to our stakeholders, and that if they did buy Whole Foods, they were going to keep that all in place. But they did feel like there were things that they could add to our business, resources that we didn't have to help us grow faster. So now it's been a little over 2 years. So it's 2 years in August, and it's been true. They've completely left us alone in terms of our quality standards, but they brought resources to us that have allowed us to do things like the delivery, the Prime Now program, which we never would have put that together ourselves. And they've also given us resources to grow faster. And all of our 365 private label is all online now too. So it's helped us actually expand our reach. So it's been really a great win for us so far.
So Amazon, obviously a company that elicits a lot of feelings from consumers. Do you worry ever that reaction alienates your core in some way, your core customer, sort of that initial group that started with you?
Well, I think that we were a large company prior to the merger already, and I think that our core customer is mostly concerned about, are we maintaining our quality standards? Do we still stand for what we stand for, which we do? And I think that it's being able to, again, have these additional resources to add more services and more things to the company. Our customers are happy. Both our core and occasional customers have seen a lot of things improve.
So who's really pushing here? Do you feel like you're pushing the customer forward on some of these standards, or are they pushing you?
It's really a combination. I think that when I think back over the years to when we've developed, different standards, it's things that we start to hear from some of our customers. It may also be things that we hear from some suppliers about things, and we have to decide a lot of times where to put our resources, our time and energy into what will be something might only be an issue today for a few customers, but it's the kind of thing we think eventually people are going to be concerned about. Antibiotics was that way. I mean, when we started working on 25 plus years ago on getting antibiotics out of all our meats, a few people were interested in it, but it really wasn't like, it really shows you 25 years later, most people expect that, that it shouldn't be used at all.
Right.
And so, a good example of that is our animal welfare standards. We, again, about around 2007 or so, 2008, we said, we've done a good job of getting antibiotics and hormones out of our meat supply, but do we really know about everything about how the animals are being raised that are part of our program? And we realized that we didn't. And we realized that if the average person went and looked at some of these farms or went to a slaughterhouse or something, they might not be happy with some of the stuff they saw that was standard industry practice. So we brought together animal welfare activists from a lot of the top organizations like HSUS, scientists, some of our growers, and we went through species by species, and we developed what we called our animal welfare standards to take into account what do you need to do to have a program that really honors the natural behaviors of these different animals. And so it took about three years to put the whole thing together, and we introduced it. Now, most customers weren't asking for it, but once we came out with it, they were like, "Yo, good. That's something we are concerned about." So it's a process of listening to the customers and and other stakeholders. And then it's a matter of going out and trying to find like-minded suppliers who really are interested in that as well, who say, yeah, I would love to turn my farms and operations in line with that, because they also believe that that's the way forward.
So what do you think are those next things? What's kind of next on the horizon that you see the consumer starting to care about that might become common practice in the next couple of years?
Well, there's a couple of things. Not all things we do have been successful. We felt like a few years ago, about 4 years ago, we said, we need to figure out a way to kind of go beyond organic. That organic's great in terms of keeping certain chemical pesticides and fertilizers and things out of the environment and growing safer food, but it doesn't really take into account everything that might be going on in the environment around it. It doesn't also take into account farm labor, on that. We had done all that work on imported product, but not a lot on domestic. So we created a program we called Responsibly Grown that was a rating system that would rate farms based on their water usage, their soil health, do they use alternative energy, their farm labor practices, and all these things. So we created this program, and it turned out that it was just too complex for...
More than the consumer wanted to know.
It was more details than the consumer wanted to know. It was also confusing even for our team members in the store to figure out their ratings. And we even had some growers, because of the rating system, some conventional growers actually got as high ratings as some of the organic growers, and the organic growers weren't happy about it. So we realized that it was a good try, it didn't work, and so we backed away from it. And we've been thinking the last year or two about what can we do next. And so to answer the question, we're doing two things now. We pulled that apart, and two things that we think are really important now are, we're still trying to figure out and I heard Sam talking a little earlier, and he's right about how important food production is to the environment.
Right.
And so I think a lot of us have been hearing about regenerative agriculture, but not really sure exactly what that means. And we're starting to really work with a few growers now. A few of our suppliers are doing regen ag processes, but it's not really defined for all different types of crops. But one of the things we're going to do this year is we're going to spend a lot of time and energy looking into regenerative agriculture and how we can add that aspect to, say, organic production, right, and how we kind of keep moving that forward. So that's one of the big things that I think people are coming up top of mind for people. Right. The other one is farm labor. I think that people don't necessarily want to know all the details about how every worker is treated and all that stuff, but people want to know that when I do something, whether I buy a shirt or whether I buy this broccoli or whatever, or these shoes or whatever, that there's no harm being done, either to the environment or to the people who are in that supply chain.
Right.
And it's really hard as a consumer to know those things. So what we believe that we can take our whole trade program and expand it pretty significantly to other parts of our supply chain.
Right.
We're now looking at bringing it domestic, starting working with our domestic suppliers on a whole trade program. And we're looking also to move it into other categories like meat and seafood.
Great.
So that's the second one.
Sorry, AC,
Yep.
we are out of time.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna all have to go to Whole Foods to figure out what the next to come is. But regenerative and farm labor, big things to keep in mind.
Third one is packaging.
Packaging. Okay, packaging. Keep an eye out. AC, thank you so much.
Sure, thank you. Yep.